All right, welcome to Ubiquitous Shells. I am John Gorenflo. I'm a penetration tester, security engineer, that type of thing. I teach for SANS and do independent consulting. My company's Fundamental Security. I love security. It's just fun, right? And I think that's why we're all here. But I teach hacker techniques and incident handling for SANS. I also teach a pen test class, in addition to doing penetration testing, etc. So a little bit about why I chose this talk. It was one of those times I didn't really feel like I chose the talk. I felt like the talk kind of chose me, right? So about a year and a half ago, something like that, my boss kind of came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to go this direction. I need you to kind of do this project," right? It was one of those moments. I was like, "Really?" Because I think it's time for me to leave, right? And so I lined up a consulting gig. Was going to have a 4-month contract somewhere. Put in my 2-week notice. Right? 1 week into my 2-week notice, I get word that the CISO that I was going to be working for got laid off. Right? Gone. And so contract was gone too. Right? So lesson number 1 of independent consulting: have some sort of get paid if the contract or project ends. Right? It doesn't happen. So I was in this situation where I don't have income. I no longer have a job. Right? And took whatever work I could get. So, this opportunity came up. Somebody's doing a project where they're taking a look at somebody's network and included reviewing their Ubiquity wireless config. I'm a network guy. That's kind of where I cut my teeth in the IT world. I'm like, all right, no problem. I'll dig into that. So I dive into Ubiquity, right, and look at the tools, and it's kind of cool, right? So I did a little bit of look at the company itself because, who is it? What are they doing? What kind of products do they have? Where does it fit in the environment, etc. And really kind of a cool story, right? So the equipment manufacturer itself focused on small, medium-sized businesses. Real heavy focus on wireless ISPs. Okay, and I'll get to why in just a minute. The CEO, a billionaire, $5.9 billion net worth, something like that. Last I saw, owns the Grizzlies, and he just turned 40, right? Dude's killing it. And I'm I'm speaking at Derbycon. Right? Right, so the company's approaching $1 billion net worth itself, right? He bought the Grizzlies when he was 35, right? Dude's crushing it, okay? So a little bit how it got started. His name's Robert Pera. Was working at Apple, right? He was testing all the Wi-Fi gear at Apple and looking to make sure it met with all the regulations and everything in terms of electromagnetic emissions and that kind of stuff. And he kind of noticed these things are way underpowered. We could crank the power on these devices and shoot Wi-Fi shots really long distances. Right, so he took it to his boss. He's all hard charging and hey, we could do this. We could do this. This is an opportunity. And the boss is pats him on the head and says, "Go away, whippersnapper." Right? You gotta pay your dues here before you go do something fun and exciting like that. So his first year at the job, killed himself, did all the extra he could, and got a 2 out of 5 on his review. He was yeah, thanks, try again next year, right? No raise, okay? And his salary at that point is reported to be about $65,000 a year out in California, right? That's not much. The dude's smart, right? And he went to work at Apple because he was idolizing Steve Jobs, right? And then just kind of all the hopes and dreams kind of get crushed. Well, he's okay, well, if they don't want to do this, I'm going to start going into it on my own. I'll work on it on nights and weekends, buy hardware, mess with chipsets and all that good stuff. He did that. So about 2005-ish, he's ready to go to market with a chip. But he quickly figured out, he's got these chips, he can shoot these Wi-Fi shots really long range, right? But the problem was, once everybody else kind of figured out what he was doing, he knew he'd be screwed, right? Because somebody else is just going to copy it and undercut him with the scale. And so what he started doing is saying, okay, how did Apple succeed at this? So he took it and figured out how he could package it all together to make all this stuff work really well, really easily, and then deployed it at a low cost. So what he did was he started focusing on those wireless ISPs and packaged everything together, shooting long-range Wi-Fi shots. He could get a house online for $200, whereas 2 antennas for the competing ISPs, you're looking at between $5,000 and $10,000. At least according to the research that I did at that time. Right? So that was pretty good. So he had this early market into wireless ISPs, used everywhere for rural and undeveloped areas. Okay, so real popular in lesser developed countries, and real popular in all the rural places around the United States. Okay, cool. Well, as I got to thinking about it, I was like, I think I've heard of Ubiquity before now. It seems like they've been in the news recently, right? So I started doing a little bit of searching, like, just to see what's been out there, right? First thing I came across. Oops. Right? So they got hit by, like, the money transfer schemes where they're trying to steal money, like they convince people to move money around one way or the other. Kind of an elaborate scheme. It's not the simple, like, oh, this person's just stupid, they didn't validate. No, they emailed using multiple different email addresses, right? Sent 14 wire transfers over 17 days. So it wasn't like they just asked them, hey, can you just transfer $46.7 million? Right? No, that wasn't how it worked. They hit a bunch of different transfers over several different days. They're emailing multiple people within the company. And in the process there, they were telling them that the information in the transfers had to do with an acquisition, so they weren't allowed to talk about it. Right? And all the emails were like from lawyers or claiming to be lawyers, etc., which added credence to that and keeping it quiet. So then, like, the natural process of checking to make sure that somebody, did request a transfer or not didn't happen because they've got this reason to keep it quiet. Okay? Now they did get most of it back, but I think they ended up losing around like either $4 or $7 million, something like that, in the long run, which is a lot better than 46. But it's like, okay, well, now what, right? Oh, and then the email address, right? It wasn't from their actual law firm, right? The email address they're using was from consultant.com. Sounds official, right? All right, ubiquitous worms. So Ubiquity Network's targeted by a firmware worm, right? So this was a worm just went around spreading through all the firmwares using like known vulnerabilities, default passwords, and that kind of stuff, right? And it kind of turned into ubiquitous bricks, because then we had like BrickerBot going about. And there's multiple iterations of BrickerBot, right? There's 3 or 4 of them. And so BrickerBot was like PDOS, or Permanent Denial of Service. It'd connect up the device, and it targeted a whole bunch of different things, like cameras, other types of things. Not just Ubiquity, but Ubiquity is a big target with BrickerBot. So it went in, and then it would just start copying random stuff into all the places in Flash. So it like eventually just kills the box and kind of screwed. Can't even reboot at that point. Right? That's kind of mean and nasty. Okay. So additional stuff that did here, different ways that it got in there. We had the permanent denial of service, had arbitrary file uploads, and drop their vulnerabilities were the 2 major things that I saw at the time. Right? And then they had the really big oops. This one was like the kind of thing that you just kind of slap your head and then scratch it, because like, how do you put a 20-year-old vulnerability into a brand new piece of equipment? But it's like, yeah, I kind of say when I teach, like IoT stuff anymore, I swear it's wormholes to like the 80s and 90s. I mean, that's really what it is. Because like, you just jump in there, it's like, oh, look, right? Things that we thought we fixed 20 years ago are back again. Right? All right, so what? Well, as I got to look at all this stuff, like, well, that's a lot of stuff, right? So, bunch of issues, bunch of simple things, not even hard. Like, if you're going to build a brand new project, starting today, are you going to go get a 20-year-old version of PHP? I mean, like, so there's some serious oversight missing in how they're going about getting this business off the ground and getting these products to market, right? So you see that many stuff, you know they've got some issues. Well, we'll go back to that first project, right? I get in there, and once I start digging into the product itself and seeing what it can do, I was really kind of impressed. There's a whole bunch of different like enterprise features, and it was cheap, right? Like so cheap. Like I'll demo this stuff in just a second here, but you get into Ubiquity. Anybody who's Ubiquity users? Everybody came to find out how bad this stuff. I don't even have to do the demo, right? Well, for those that are like online, I'll quickly go over that stuff here. All right, so this is a demo box available out on Ubiquity's site. All right, so you can just go through. This is actually set up. I don't know if this is the actual live equipment at the the Grizzlies basketball arena or not, but they've made it at least look like it is. Okay, but you dive in here, you can see throughput, latency stuff. You can kick off speed tests, right? So it'll run a speed test on the internet connection and give you an idea of what your bandwidth is looking like at the moment, right? Kind of nice. Shows you your WAN, LAN, WLAN stuff. Over here you can see all the devices that you've got set up. And when it says devices, it's talking about the network gear itself. For clients, it shows you all the different clients, the channels they're connected to. You can see throughput and latency, all sorts of data. It calls it deep packet inspection. You've got to have their firewall or the security gateways for that to show up. I don't really call it deep packet inspection. I think it's more like, oh, it went to this domain. It must be Facebook and social media, right? Like it's not extremely intelligent, but it's at least some idea of what's going on there. As you go into other stuff, there's statistics here. You can analyze, what's going on with the different channels, the devices. Are they using, which frequency are they using? That kind of stuff. The map stuff's pretty cool. You can integrate Google Maps into this, right? You can put an API key for Google Maps and then drop it in. It'll also show you your topology, which that's really slow. It's really big. This works better on a smaller network. But I'll switch the map so you can see the map. There we go. So you can see all the devices they've got inside the basketball arena and the coverage roughly. And you can click on individual devices and take a look at the information about it, see the details, right? What's the RF frequency for that specific device? I mean, this is all like just included in the software and the hardware. And you can get into this software and hardware for as cheap as like between 60 and 80 bucks. All you need is to buy an access point, install the software, which you download for free from their site, and you're off and running. Right? Like 80 bucks. Are you going to go buy like a $150 Linksys router that really isn't all that great? Or you can buy something like this, right? That's why you all have it. Okay? Go away. So, I mean, really, really pretty impressive in terms of what it can do. Clients, keeps track of all the different clients. You can take a look at an individual client. Come in here, tell it to use a fixed IP address, and then assign that IP address to it, and it's going to reserve it. I mean, real simple management. Gives an easy way to keep an inventory of your home network, which is what I've really loved about having it myself, And then, as you're digging into the access points themselves, you've got all sorts of different options here, right? So you've got the tools, and then we've got this debug terminal. Now, they've got this disabled on this site here, right? So I'm going to have to switch. This is actually my home site. So I'm going to open up the debug terminal here, and that's a shell, right? Now, notice we've got probably tough to see it, we've got a pound sign there, which means root, right? Did I authenticate to it? No, I authenticated to my website, right, to get to the management site, but that's it. Okay, it handles everything else. Now, it goes about doing that with WebRTC, right? And that's it's an area like I'm going to continue researching after this, because it includes like using SDN and all that to it reaches out to a third party to help exchange the negotiation for the authentication back and forth. It's insane, right? Can't believe that that's set up properly. But either way, at this point, I've got a root shell. Now, okay, it's a root shell. Well, what are we running, right? So it is Linux, and you've got just about everything you want to do with Linux. Okay? Now, you're running BusyBox. It is a MIPS processor, so you're limited a little bit with what you can do. However, you've got all the makings of a start into somebody's environment. Right? All right, so root shell. Now, here's the crazy piece, right? It has this wonderful cloud management feature. How many of you use the cloud management feature? Not very many. Good, right? Like, far less hands. Okay? So, cloud management feature, all you have to have is the account out at Ubiquity's site, right? So, if you go out to their site, you can just click the register button, okay? Now, so I create an account, right? I'm John Gorenflo, so I'm going to look for, because I try and get Jay Gorenflo everywhere I go. Like, I didn't bother disclosing it to Ubiquity. It discloses itself, right? So as you type, it's doing like the JavaScript either, I don't know if it's on key press or whatever, but basically it's sending every few seconds whatever's in these boxes out to Ubiquity and saying, hey, is there a user with that name? Okay? Well, that's kind of bad, right? So then, what do you think most people do? Like if they've got their, if they're like the Super Elite Wizard Hacksaw 73, right, and that's what they use everywhere, well, they've got Super Elite Hacksaw Wizard 73 as their username. What do you think their email address is? At gmail.com, at yahoo.com, at hotmail.com, at outlook.com, right? And so, jump back here. PowerPoint, please. So not only does it do that with the username field, it also does it on the email address field. So then I take the username and I just start appending Yahoo, Gmail, whatever, to it to take a wild guess, right? And so, we get to where I got the start of this username in a minute, but I just found what it was a potential username, typed it in, and then just started guessing on the domains. Started with Gmail, because, well, we're all owned by Google at this point, right? Like, it took me about 3 different users, like acquiring usernames, before I found one that had it synced up like this. Now, and that's just going with personal domains. If I can figure out this user ID and then trace it back to the company that they work at, do you think that they probably have, you know, their company email address set up for their company access? Oh, absolutely. All right. All right, so then we have the profile settings, right? So when you set up your account out at Ubiquity, you get a couple different things set up. One, you get set up so you can go access the cloud management features, right? And then it also sets up a forum account for their community, right? Anybody notice something like sort of related there? Yeah. The name that shows up in the community is your username. You can use that to log in, right? Well, that's makes it relatively easy, right? So then I can go through. I take all the different users that I identify in the community out on the forums, start guessing, Yahoo, Gmail, etc. Do the research on them, find out what company they work at, try their domain name. Now I've got potential access to their system, right? And then, well, okay, so we've got like these user IDs, etc. Like, what's the likelihood that somebody's actually going to be able to exploit that, right? Well, we'll go back to my friend that I found earlier today, and 7 breach sites and 1 paste, meaning his username and at least password or password hash has been identified in something like pastebin or somewhere similar. Yeah. All right. So now, like I said, it only took me like 3 or 4 users going through the forums to like take the username, guess the username, validate it against the user registration, guess that it was a Gmail account, and then checking, have I been pwned? Well, I can see he's already been popped. Right? And is it really all that hard to go find these password dumps? No, not in most cases. Right? All right, so how else can we get the usernames? Well, so the first thing I did was, you can go through the forums, right? Well, so then I started looking at the web app a little bit more, and I click on a few different users' profiles. And I noticed that there's this nice little number up in the user's profile, right, in the URL. just a number, so you can start iterating through on those numbers, and you're discovering more users, right? So the top example here is going through and just iterating through those numbers, right? So we set off a loop, starting at 813,100 through 200, kick it off, and then it just does curl, grabs that information back, greps it out, cuts it out, and dumps it out to the screen, right? Now, down below here is another way you can do it. You can just go through and start crawling through the forum itself and take all the usernames that you discover on the forum and drop it to a file. You can take those and then guess it either against the Ubiquity API to see if there's Gmail, Yahoo, whatever, and go that way. And then take that same kind of approach with the Have I Been Pwned API, right? And if you didn't know there's an API, it's absolutely free to use it, Have I Been Pwned. You can easily make those calls and check it for compromised accounts. Right. Now, that all sounds like, okay, so we've got some issues, right? Here's where it got really scary for me. As I started digging into my profile settings, right? Default security settings, session timeout. Yeah, really? Like, I realize that's convenient, especially for the forums, right? But if I can log into their website and then go down and connect into my house or my place of business. Place of business, I did that during that assessment. I forgot to check something one day, went home at night. I was like, oh, I'll just do it this way. So they gave me all the passwords so I could manage the stuff, right? And I was able to check something remotely using a shell, and it was like pivoting through the Ubiquity gear to get to other parts of the network. Legitimately, right? But it's still what I was doing. All right, now, cool thing. They do offer two-factor. How many people have two-factor enabled on their account? Hopefully those are all the same hands that said they're using the cloud access, right, or the cloud connection to manage their stuff from the internet. Okay? So you can set that stuff up, create a token, and stuff. Now, the problem is, how many people like to use two-factor? Well, how many people like the security two-factor offers, but don't necessarily like using two-factor? Right? Most people, it rarely makes it easier, right? It's very rare that two-factor is an easy, smooth, awesome process. Right? So then, okay, we've got all this stuff. We've got like remote access into people's environments, and then we've got all these issues out on the internet. It's like, how much stuff is out there, right? So I started using Shodan, doing some searches, trying to figure out what's out there. How much is the world actually using this stuff? Well, probably quite a bit, since it's nearing $1 billion company. So the scary thing is I started doing the Shodan searches, stuff was coming back, and I'm finding all these devices out there, and I've got stuff showing up on weird ports, and I've got things like, the second one here is port 1900, which is what? Universal plug-and-play. Right? So people's universal plug-and-play is exposing Ubiquity stuff to the internet. They don't even know they're exposing it to the internet. Right? Gets a little bit scarier. Okay? Because now I don't even have to have access to the cloud stuff to access your network. If you're putting it out there and you don't even know that universal plug-and-play is like broadcasting this stuff out to the internet, you're exposed and people don't even know it's there. Right? Then it got even scarier for me. The number of like MongoDB, which all the configuration stuff for the web app is saved in MongoDB, which has a great reputation for security, right? No. But worse, it at least on when you install the software by default, it puts it on the local interface, right? So you got to hit it via 127.0.0.1. Some people apparently thought it was a good idea to put it on the internet directly, right? That's frightening. Okay. So I'm like, okay, well, how much is actually out there? Oh. Right, now, that's not all management servers. A lot of that's equipment, right? It's wireless gear, the long-range Wi-Fi shots and that kind of stuff. Right? It's a mixture of all of that. Okay. Now, the Unify, though, Unify is anything that has Unify in the name. That is their Wi-Fi lineup, right? And that is more like Wi-Fi like we're used to dealing with for home and corporate use. That's a lot, okay? And then I was doing more research last week, and stumbled across one, and the name of the router had been changed, right? The name of the router was changed to Hack Router Help SOS Vuln EDB 39701. Like, they were at least kind enough to tell them exactly how they did it, right? I wish I could do pen test reports like this, right? My job would be a lot easier. But, so I go through, I check here, like, what's the count on those? Okay? And it's not just this vulnerability, there's a whole bunch of other ones. So they changed, like, Hack Router, Help, SOS, and it tells you, like, duplicate password, and a few other things that like other ways that they compromise the devices. Okay? Sometimes you hate internet trolls, and sometimes you love them. Right? All right, and now we've got Ubiquitous Customers. So this is a conversation I saw happening on Twitter. Right? So this guy messaged Troy Hunt. So I followed Troy Hunt. This guy is in the UK, right? And his ISP set up their CP, so the customer premise equipment, sets out that stuff up, but set all the device names to names and addresses of their customers. Okay? Well, he's like, basically it's like broadcasting all this stuff out. So he plugged into his own UniFi switch, right? And then his home management server started sucking in all those usernames and detecting all the devices that his UniFi switch could now see via layer 2. Okay? And so then, like, he lets his service provider know, and they're like threatening to shut him off. Right? Like, really? Like, GDPR much? You know? I mean, so I messaged him. I was like, okay, give me the full story. Like, what was actually happening here? So this was his home setup. Like, basically, he set it up this way because he's running out of power outlets, right? They're kind of in a premium at his apartment. So he wanted to use the 802.11, not 802.11. He wanted to use the power over Ethernet features of the switch to power their access point, right? So he fires that up, plugs in, and that's when it starts sucking all that data in, okay? So basically it's the field name for the clients, which you saw a little bit in the demo a few minutes ago. It has the names in the first lines of the addresses. So I asked him, like, okay, so what kind of names, addresses, who's in there? Like any celebrities, like politicians, anything like that? Not quite that exciting, but there were a lot of business names, right? Not-for-profits, etc., that were customers of this ISP, and now, you know, their ISP had all the private IP addresses for the management stuff. So it was all 10.5. whatever. Okay? So, okay, I love Ubiquity here, but the problem here is that we've got a lot of people, they've made it so easy to set this stuff up that anybody can do it, whether they should or not, right? And so we've got a lot of people like going into the WISP business or the wireless ISP business that have either limited or no IT experience, right? Or they're somebody's nephew that was kind of good at IT and they did a bunch of small businesses and that kind of thing. So you've got folks that know those things and can get these things set up, but may not necessarily have any security mindset at all, right? And we've already talked about all the different vulnerabilities that the gear has had and how easy it is to get this stuff misconfigured and expose yourself to some pretty nasty stuff. Right? Now, why do you care? Okay? Now, you're all here because you all have the equipment, right? Or you know me, one of the two. Like, but this is why you should care. They're starting to make this big push to get into corporations. They've got, like, the wireless ISP market cornered, right? They've got the best gear. They've got proprietary technology for those long-range shots, the way they do timing and all that with the signals. So they're not losing customers there. If anything, it's just going to pick up more. So as they have developed that Wi-Fi stuff, they're pushing into the enterprise market. So we're going to start seeing this stuff pop up in small and medium businesses even more. And I think you're going to start seeing it pop up in your companies as well. Because this is the kind of thing the tech enthusiasts are going to have it on their network, and they're going to try and bring it to work. This is awesome. We need to have this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's how iPhones made it into the enterprise. Right? I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but it's how they did it. They got in everybody's personal stuff, their personal phone, and it was just, you know, then the executives took it in and said, I have to have this in the company. Right? So we've got Ubiquity pushing hard into the enterprises. You're going to start seeing this either from a deployment standpoint in your environment, and you're going to have to know how to configure it and harden it. And you can also see it come in if you're a pen tester. Right? These are things you're going to have to understand. Unfortunately, it doesn't take that much to understand it. It's just pretty simple. Okay. All right. Real quick on connecting to the Mongo database. So it's kind of old. The MongoDB version that it's using is like circa 2015. Right? So you have to go download previous versions. I've got like the links out there, so you can go download the older versions. I had to download 2.4.14 to actually get it to connect on my host. I've got the controller right now running on a Windows box. And so you connect it up. There's all sorts of information. This is just an example. Okay? So you connect the database, so using the Mongo client, you go give it the database name, which is ACE by default. And so db.admin.find, which is kind of like select star, from table, it gives you everything. So this is the admin collection. So we've got the username of admin and then xshadow, which is hash of the admin password. I have read-write access here, so I could either change it. So I don't have to have the password to get access to the web app. If I can just get access to the host that's running the controller software, I can connect to the Mongo database and insert my own hash of whatever I want it to be. Right? Worse is you dig into other parts of the database, and these are things I'm not including up here. There's a lot of stuff in there that's clear text that you wouldn't expect to be clear text. Right? So if you have any type of radius profile with secret keys, oh yeah, clear text. All the Wi-Fi passwords, if you're using pre-shared keys, clear text. You go through and dig through, it's amazing what's in there. It's just plain text and easy to pull out. You could also then change it if you wanted to. All the configuration items for how all the Ubiquity gear in Mongo database. So at that point, if I can get access to the host without password or anything, I can either just change the password here or insert my own hash to get access, create my own user, whatever I want to do. Or if I know Mongo well enough, I could just write it out myself and make all the changes directly. No security. Now, beyond that, let's say you're on a network and you're looking for the wireless stuff. And this is like, I kept looking for that things like I was going to do this really wicked, awesome, cool, specialized hack. I never got there. Like, the more I went, the more I found stuff. I'm like, really? Like, I don't have to do anything? Oh, okay. It's like this. If you kill the controller software on the controller, the devices apparently get lonely, and they start pinging for the controller, right? Non-stop. They're just broadcasting out on port 10,001, right, and spewing all their personal information at the same time, right? So this is just a TCP dump. We're looking for UDP port 10,001. Dump out in the ASCII form. So you see I've got it marked out here. So I've got two things on my network, right? So number one for both these, that's the host name that I gave it, right? So this is something that I can control in terms of what it is. It's also going to be descriptive within an actual company. So two, you're looking at like the model of the device that it is, right? 3 is the hardware, so like the QCA956X, that's a Qualcomm chipset, what that is, right? Qualcomm Atheros. ER E120 down below, that's the ER is edge router, that's actually Ubiquity's information about the device. The E120 is specific to the security gateways. And then number 4 is probably my favorite here, right? Like full revision level on the firmware that it's running. So there's all sorts of vulnerabilities in their firmware, in the management consoles, in the software, etc., throughout all their different hardware. And if you can't talk to the host, right, it just starts spewing that out to the network as a whole. So it makes it easy to get the information to customize an exploit, etc. Right? And so if you're on a network, if you can just kill or denial of service the controller, they're going to start spewing this information out. Right? All right. So let's go back to the shell. So on the box, if you get onto that AP, right, we've got netcat, TCP dump, curl, hash, which is really watered down version of a shell, an SSH client, and DNS Mask. Right? Con that a lot of that stuff is from BusyBox. Okay? So the downside there is like you don't necessarily have anything that's all that fantastic, right? So like Netcat, for example, it's BusyBox Netcat. It's not like full-featured Netcat. It's like you can connect to another host on a port, and that's it, right? Not all that fun. Ash, well, it's just not Bash, right? The SSH client, limited, like it doesn't do some of the newer ciphers and stuff like that, so it's, again, very, very limited. Everything else that's cool about Linux, you can still do. Right? Now, you've got to go back in time a little bit. If you're more familiar with like more modern versions of Bash and how you can do some of your scripting language stuff in there, you got to go back a little further to do it in Ash, but it all still works. Okay? Now, the real cool thing, though, is DNS Mask. Because what is DNS Mask? What can I do with that? It's about anything, right? So, like with DNS Mask, you're kind of limited to your own creativity. There's other stuff on there, too. Forgot to add the bullet. So, EB tables. Anybody familiar with EB tables? It's like layer 2 IP tables. Okay? And so it even has features like natting, right? Like MAC address natting, which like, seems a little crazy. But basically, if you do MAC address natting on an AP, what are you going to be able to do? It's going to come in destined for one NAT, or MAC can go out to another one, right? So it can kind of reroute that stuff. That's all the makings for man in the middle, right? And not just man in the middle on the AP, because like I said, it's MIPS. You're going to be limited in terms of what you can actually run on the device, but you can do man in the middle by doing the MAC address forwarding. Right? So you do that MAC NAT, and it's going to be able to forward to another host that maybe you control on the network, and do man in the middle there. Right? All right. Now, if we want to upgrade this stuff, like how do we get these things on the box? Well, we've got some other stuff that's built in there that makes it a little bit easier, okay? The home directory, when you log in, is in var etc persistent, and we need the easy way to get the tools on the box. Well, I don't like typing, and so I wrote a nice little script, right? I call it get ubi tools, right? So do a curl -l, go out to the bit.ly link, right? Because otherwise it's really long. Pulls this down from GitHub, which will then go out and it'll download a bunch of different MIPS binaries that I was able to just find by Googling around a little bit, right? So it downloads Netcat, Lua, a full-featured version of TCP dump, Synfled option, right? Because Synfleds I can then do the denial of service to kill the controller, right? And then start watching to see who broadcasts out and what the information is, right? And then I can actually get a full-featured version of Bash too. Okay? So it downloads all that stuff, puts it in the persistent directory, and then from there it will be there anytime you need to use it. All right, so this is me SSH directly into my access point. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy and paste on this. All right, so now I've got the script. Downloads all the tools. All right, so now I can do, and it's full-featured Netcat at that point. All right. Now, this works for just about anything that you can get in terms of MIPS binaries. Now, there's some other stuff out there that I could get the MIPS binaries, but it didn't work on the AP. For instance, like BetterCap doesn't work on there. There's actually an open ticket out on GitHub to compile that properly so that it'll work on MIPS hardware, because it's not working at the moment, so that it can be used on things like Wi-Fi pineapples, etc. And so something hopefully will be compiled soon. I haven't had a chance to try and do it myself yet. All right. Okay, so we've got Netcat. So what, right? Well, yeah, there we go. A few people have taken some 504 and 560 classes. All right, so this is a box that I have out at DigitalOcean. All right, so you can see it's public IP address. On the access point, we need to create our backpipe file first. Set this up. So I've got, on the DigitalOcean server, I'm going to do NCAT, which is the netcat that comes with Nmap, right? We're going to listen on 2222 and 3333, right? And then on the access point, we're going to connect to 3333 on the DigitalOcean box, right? But we've also got netcat here, which is going to connect to a Windows box at my house on port 445. Okay. All right, so we can see that connection's established. Oops, I need another session here. Remember that IP address. Thank you. Should have had that ready. All right. So we're going to use the exploit, Windows, SMB, cast exec. Just that. I'll kick that off in a second. You good? Oops. I guess thought you were actually going to see a password, didn't you? That's denied. Fantastic. Well, either way it worked, right? I just forgot to add Derbycon to the local admin group. But you can see, like, we connected up at that point, going from my cloud server through the Netcat shell and connecting back to that network, compromising the Windows machine in there. I'm out of time here, so I'll go quick through the rest of this. All right, so other ideas and what else we can do. So things like better cap, nmap, better versions of SSH, compile those with in MIPS format that'll work on the host. All right. The other thing that I've been doing some research on is using the DNS Mask to do all sorts of stuff. So it has all sorts of things built into the APs so that you can use it for Wi-Fi hotspots and that kind of stuff, firewalling, paywalls, and that kind of stuff. All those options built right into the AP. So it has the ability to launch a web server, etc. And you can use DNS Mask to issue IP addresses, issue DNS, which if I control your DNS, I control just about everything, right? So kind of nasty stuff. Right? And then options to set up the persistence through reboots. Okay. If you went to Daryl Hyland's talk this morning, he talked all about how you can overwrite the flash and that kind of stuff on IoT devices and control, and basically persist, past the reboots, etc. All right. So this is the cloud key. This is a piece of hardware they sell. It's power over Ethernet, right? It's about this big, right? It's like 3 or 4 inches. And so this has like a quad-core processor in it, Snapdragon processor. Has a SD card slot, so you can put and it comes with an 8 gigabyte SD card that you can put in there. Right? So, and it runs Debian, right? Debian 8. At that point, right? That's one heck of a Dropbox, in my opinion. Right? You just disable all the Ubiquity stuff, and you can start installing your own tools. So things like the Pentester's framework works really well on there. Right? Has Python. Right? At that point, it's great for creating that shell and into an environment because power over Ethernet is really common anymore because it's where, right? We have to have it for VoIP, right? Wireless access points, etc. in corporate environments. So that's pretty cool. And they just released this. Like I was watching, I was hoping to buy one before Derbycon, but it was only available in like the advanced purchase thing, right? The partner program or whatever. This is the next version of it. And this is, the Unify software also controls like video cameras and stuff. And so this device actually has like a 1 terabyte hard drive built into it, right? I didn't find the specs for the processor and all that, but I imagine it's going to be similar to the Snapdragon processor and all that. So, I'm getting the sign. So, this is it for now. Like I have a lot more research I plan on doing. Any questions at this point? So I didn't report any of this to Ubiquity because what is there to report, right? Your users are misusing their products, Like the only thing that I probably could have reported out of what I've shown so far is the username enumeration on the website, but it kind of discloses itself, so I didn't really see the point. Right? Beyond that, it's not really exploiting the gear itself, it's exploiting bad configurations. Right? That's it. It's wide open. Now, like I said, by default, it is listed on the local interface. What's that? He asked if the Mongo database is wide open by default. And yeah, it's wide open by default. No authentication necessary. You just connect up to it. If you can touch the port, you can make configuration changes to the Ubiquity stuff, right? Or just update the database. Now, actually, the scarier thing. So he asked if I did any research to the people that are packaging up the Unify software, the management controller, on Raspberry Pis, right? So they'll package that up, kind of sell it, and a lot of people just buy a Pi and install it themselves in their home that way. The scarier thing for me is there's people running Unify as a service, as a business, and so they set up Unify controllers out at places like DigitalOcean and Amazon and all that, and then charge people to host all that out there. So, yeah. I'm getting the stop sign. So, thank you all very much.